Invasion of Russia has begun. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Russia has begun its big revenge for Ukraine's resistance to its invasion, as Russian forces have claimed a series of incremental successes in his country's east. This comes as Russian forces have been able to advance further into eastern Ukraine. After around 2 months of what has essentially been a standstill along the front line that spans across the south and east, Zelensky has been sounding the alarm for the past few weeks, warning that Moscow intends to scale up its assault on Ukraine. Denis Pushilin, the administrator of Russian-controlled parts of Ukraine's eastern Donetsk province, stated that Russian troops had secured a foothold in Voldar. Voldar is a coal mining town whose ruins have been a Ukrainian bastion since the beginning of the war. On Monday, there was no sign of a broader new offensive, but Pushilin did say that Russian troops had secured a foothold in Voldar. Yan Gagin, an advisor to Pushilin, reported that fighters from the Russian mercenary unit Wagner had acquired partial control of a supply line leading to Bakhmut. Bakhmut has been the primary target of a Russian attack for the past few months. A day earlier, the leader of Wagner said that his forces had taken control of the village of Blahodatan, which is located just to the north of Bakhmut. Kyiv reported it had resisted assaults on Blahodatan and Voldar. The news agency Reuters was unable to independently verify the events there. However, the sites of the reported combat suggested clear gains, if gradual, for the Russian side. Zelensky stated that Russian strikes in the east were unrelenting despite severe fatalities on the Russian side. He characterized these attacks as vengeance for Ukraine's success in driving Russian forces back from the capital, the northeast, and the south earlier on in the conflict. I believe that Russia is serious about getting its great retribution. According to Zelensky, I believe that they have started it. Every day they either bring in more of their regular troops or we see an increase in the number of Wagnerites, he told reporters in Odessa, which is located in the southern port city of Ukraine. We see an increase in the number of Wagnerites. Voldar is located to the south of Bakhmut, close to the part of the eastern front line that guards the rail lines under Russian control that supply Moscow's soldiers operating in southern Ukraine. A Ukrainian colonel and military analyst named Mykola Salameka stated on Ukrainian radio NV that Moscow's assault there was going to result in a significant amount of casualties. The town sits atop a hill, and it has been developed into an exceptionally robust defensive hub, he explained. This is a repetition of the situation that took place in Bakhmut. One wave of Russian troops after another was crushed by the Ukrainian armed forces. The delivery of weapons will take several months. In the past several weeks, Western countries have made commitments to provide the Ukrainian armed forces with hundreds of modern tanks and armored vehicles to prepare them for an operation that will take place later in the year 2023. But the supply of such weaponry won't take place for several more months, which means that Kyiv will have to continue fighting throughout the winter in what both sides have described as a meat grinder of continuous attritional warfare. To buy time for Russia's regular military to reconstruct battalions with hundreds of thousands of reservists, Moscow's Wagner mercenary force has sent thousands of convicts recruited from Russian jails to fight around Bakhmut. For Ukraine to launch an offensive, Zelensky is requesting that the West expedite the delivery of the weaponry as promised. Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, stated that the provision of armaments by Western nations leads to NATO countries more and more becoming directly involved in the conflict, but it does not have the potential to change the course of events and will not do so. According to the Institute for the Study of War, a think tank based in the United States, the West's failure to provide the necessary material was the primary reason why Kyiv's advances had ceased since November of last year. In a paper, academics from Russia said that because of this, Russia was able to apply pressure at Bakhmut and build the front against a potential offensive by Ukraine. However, the researchers also said that Ukraine might still retake land if the promised weaponry arrives. In a rare visit by a foreign leader so close to the front lines, Zelensky was able to meet with the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, on Monday in Mykolaiv. The city, which was the point where Russia's advance in the south was halted, had been subjected to non-stop shelling up until November when Ukraine was able to push the front line back. The video that was shared by Zelensky's office shows the president shaking hands with Frederiksen on a wintry street before entering a hospital to meet injured service members. Iran raid. While Kyiv has obtained weapons from the West, Moscow has turned to friends including Iran, which according to Kyiv and the West, has armed Russia with hundreds of long-range suicide drones that have been deployed to target Ukrainian cities. An Iranian military factory was attacked with a drone over the weekend, and according to a U.S. official, it appears that Israel was the country that was responsible for the strike. Israel has not provided any reaction. Insinuating that the strike on Iran was retaliation for Iran's military backing for Russia, Kyiv stated the following. Mikhailo Podolyak, a top aide to Zelensky, tweeted that it was an explosive night in Iran. Did warn you. In response to Podolyak's statements, Iran called in the chargé d'affaires from the Ukrainian embassy. The Russian government has stated that the attack on Iran could have unpredictable consequences for the peace and stability in the Middle East. Israel, in contrast to many Western countries, has refrained from overtly equipping Kyiv. Nonetheless, it is believed that Israel is frightened by Russia's dependence on Iranian drone technology, which Israel considers a threat to the security of the region. It was announced that Ukraine expected to spend about $550 million on drones this year, with 16 supply deals signed with Ukrainian manufacturers. Ukraine has acquired huge supplies of uncrewed aerial vehicles, UAVs, from its partners. In the meantime, France said that it had reached an agreement with Australia to work together in the production of several thousand shells for Ukraine. Russia's invasion, which it began on February 24 of the previous year and said was essential to protect itself from its neighbors' links with the West, has resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of people and the displacement of millions more from their homes. The invasion began on February 24 of the previous year. The West's worst concerns have been confirmed as Russia has begun an all-out invasion of Ukraine using land, air, and sea forces. This is the worst attack by one state against another in Europe since the end of World War II, and it confirms the worst fears of the West. After Russian President Vladimir Putin announced his approval of a special military operation in a televised address, the attacks began on Thursday. This step was taken after Moscow had previously acknowledged territory held by rebels in Luhansk and Donetsk and stated that they had called for its help. Cities in Ukraine came under attack from a barrage of Russian rockets. Ukraine stated that columns of troops were crossing its borders and entering the eastern Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Luhansk regions, as well as landing by sea in the southern cities of Odessa and Mariupol. According to Ukraine's border guard service, Russian troops assaulted Ukraine from Belarus as well as Russia with help from Belarus, while an attack was also being launched from occupied Crimea. Both of these attacks originated in Russia. In the early morning hours, residents of the Ukrainian capital city of Kyiv reported hearing explosions. There was gunfire heard close to the primary airport and sirens could be heard all around the city. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the martial rule has been implemented and he has called on other world leaders to apply all possible sanctions on Russia, particularly on Vladimir Putin, whom he claims wants to destroy the Ukrainian state. Zelensky also announced that martial law has been implemented. Do you like it? Kindly give your valuable response in our comment section below and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting and informative videos.